Before we jump in, I just want to point out that due to the granular way that permissions and access can be assigned within the system, not every account will have the exact same experience. So as we step through the features, just keep in mind that if you're following along on your all-site instance and you don't see something that I show you, it may be because your account hasn't been granted access to that data set or feature, or it could be that it just hasn't been configured like extras or some of the other features that have to be installed and added in order for them to show up. And while I'm going to show you how to do a lot of the basics, there are going to be a few features that I talk about and maybe demonstrate without diving deep into how to use them. Okay, so starting here on the dashboard page, if you're a brand new user who's never logged into the system before, this is kind of that high level overview of the computers and other items in the system. Now, this dashboard is something that I had designed and put together for myself. Each account is going to be able to create its own dashboard if it's been given permission to do so. And so I could click around here and look at other users' dashboards. There are some others here like Lab Manager and policies and purchasing that are built in, and those are kind of intended to be a starting point where you can copy those over to your account and then customize and modify them further from there. But the basic idea is admins can see all and anyone's dashboards, and others may only be able to see their own or some of them. The search bar at the top is, relatively self-explanatory, at least at first, but it actually behaves differently depending on what page you're on. So if I start typing up here, we're going to see that there are devices, lab maps, computers. I could do searches for some of these widgets as well. So the availability map one that we see here. So the search bar on the dashboard page is kind of a general purpose search that allows you to search through many, many objects within the system. And we'll come back to the search bar a few times because, again, as I said, it behaves differently on each page. Another thing you'll notice is to the left of the search bar, there is this scope. What this scope allows you to do is make a selection for a location or a tag or what we call a section. I'll get into later. But when you make a selection, it's going to basically filter the page to only include information about that group, that computer group. So not every single one of these widgets will update. I think all the ones on the screen right now do, except this availability map currently. And that's because I've selected a division and not a map location. But some of the widgets do not update. And if I go to the software tab, you'll see there's some here that don't actually have the name of that division listed. And that's how you tell the difference. On the main tab here, most of these are updating, and I can actually see that scope list named as a part of the widget header there. And if it doesn't filter to that location, then it's one that will include the name on top there. Okay, so another thing that I might as well point out here is you notice that I clicked on this software tab. You can add tabs as a part of customizing your dashboard. You do have the ability to add your own tabs. Then over on the right side, there's another plus button here. And this is actually where we go to add these widgets. If you haven't customized your dashboard yet, it will probably be what is based on the default dashboard, which I think even this default has been customized. So this is a custom default dashboard. The actual default, I think, is based on this Lab Manager one. So you may see that the dashboard starts out this way. If I come up to, actually, I'm going to close out of that Lab Manager, go back to mine. And if I go up to this plus icon at the top here, this is where I would go to add one of the widgets. If you click through these top level items, you'll see everything available. And then the view and the tags allow you to filter the list further. I'm not going to go through each of these tabs and do a whole lot of examples of particular widgets here. But just in general, when you add a widget, you'll notice that they're going to all have this settings option, and then each individual widget is going to have its own list of options. Some have a lot, some just have a few. In this case, this particular widget just gives me the ability to keep it with the active scope, which means that when I make a selection up top, it's going to dynamically change to reflect the data within that group. But you see, I can set these to, in a static way, always represent a certain location. So if you make a change here and select a location, then this widget will not dynamically change as you go along. It's going to just always reflect what you've selected there. You see there's some other options. Play around with those options and you kind of get an idea of what each widget does. Then in the far top right here, this is where you would go if you wanted to delete a dashboard or copy a dashboard over to your account. So if I save this dashboard as, what this means is that I could select a dashboard here or even create a new dashboard that would essentially copy my dashboard design over to that account. So that's what this is for, and that's how you would do that if you wanted to copy one of the default dashboards or built-in dashboards over to your account as a starting point. Just a couple of quick things, because some of these widgets are fairly popular, but not always self-explanatory. You'll notice this compare recent utilization widget has 3 different lines. These overlapping lines are intended to represent the last 3 data sets. So this is looking at a week, and this dark line, you can see we're early Thursday on the East Coast of the US right now. So this dark black line only goes to there. That represents right now. And then this slightly lighter line is last week. And then this very light line in the background is the week prior. So this just allows you to overlay those data sets to get a view of differences between them. Whereas this one is just showing 1 week, but it's allowing you to compare your background location, which is selected in the options, with whatever your scoped division is. So I can compare Adams Lab 3 selected in the settings to Adams Lab 1, which is selected as my scope. That's the idea behind that one. Other ones are more static. They're just showing you basic hardware configuration details. There's some here that talk about purchase and warranty date ranges. And on my dashboard, most of these are hardware related on this main tab. And then I've got a second tab that's showing software related details. All right. So I think that covers everything here on the dashboard. I'm going to move on. Next place we're going to go is actually the computers page. If you've got our product, you're managing computers for the most part. You might be using it to manage other devices and things that don't have our client installed. But as a user of our system, for the most part, you're managing computers. And so we're going to jump down here, start here. First thing I want to talk about here is the login types. Very briefly, dedicated and leased are the 2 login types that will consume one of your licenses. So if I get rid of this scope, we can look at all computers, and we can see there's 742 computers in the dedicated and leased categories. If I unselect these, we can see that there's actually 915 computers total on this key server. The 742 in the dedicated and leased categories are the ones consuming seats. If I wanted to remove some of these computers and take those seats away, I could drag and drop them into the dormant category or the excluded category. So if your key server is full, that's one way that you can free up some of those seats. Now, the difference between dedicated and leased, they both consume a seat, but dedicated is going to be held indefinitely until you take it away, whereas a leased seat has an expiration that will automatically renew as long as that computer stays on the network and is being used regularly, and especially if it's being audited, which is when our client will scan the drive to determine what software is installed. That will pretty much indefinitely hold that lease until it is turned off, taken off the network, and the lease expires. So let's have a quick look at a specific computer, and then we'll come back here to the computers page and talk about some of the options. So when I click on a computer, I get to see a lot of the hardware details that our client has gathered, and everything you see listed here are things that our client is going to automatically pick up. Some of these items I can click on to get more details about. And on this page, the search is searching through the details. So if I search for model, you see it's going to filter and just show me that. Or I could search for any of these other fields or data points, and it's going to sort of highlight those, not just on the tab that we're on, but on any tab where they happen to be. So if I'm looking for a particular field, I can type that field name or any of the data itself. It will search for. Under categorization, we can see that this is that login type leased, and here's the expiration date for that lease. This will automatically renew, as I said, as long as the computer's on the network and being used and audited. Auto update is another one that I wanted to mention. This really probably could be called self-update. This is a computer level setting. So there's a couple of steps in this update process. One is the computer itself has to be set to auto update here. And then the second part is down in settings here, you notice that there is an update available. That has to be selected and accepted by an administrator. So just be aware, this auto update is not all that's necessary to make sure the client stays up to date. This is a computer level setting that just determines whether or not this particular computer is included in the auto update. Okay. On this asset page, there's a couple things to mention here. On most of your computers, this may be almost completely blank except for lifecycle stage. That's because our client doesn't discover these details about a computer. These are assigned to that computer. I can go into edit mode here and populate these details. I could import these details from Jamf or Intune or from a CSV file. So there's various ways of populating this data, but the easy way obviously is to come in here and type it. And I'm going to show you another way to do these changes in bulk back on the computers page here in just a second. So if we kind of click through software, this will be the software list discovered in the last audit. Any devices that were seen connected to this computer, as any monitor or hard drive last seen connected to this computer will show up here. And on the purchase tab, this is where things like your warranty date and your purchase date are going to show up. This particular computer is linked to a purchase record, and we'll talk about purchase records, but those are not necessary to put these details in for a given computer. And we actually have some scripts and integrations that will allow you to auto-populate these details. So Dell and Lenovo, we can do a lookup directly from the manufacturer. And then we also have integrations with Jamf and Intune for Mac and other devices. So if these details are populated in those systems, you can import those as well. And then back on the dashboard, you saw one of those widgets was to show computers based on their warranty date. So that kind of ties in there as a way to view computers based on their warranty date. Install codes. If you've assigned installation codes to a particular computer in a purchase record, you'll be able to link to those from here. I won't go into that today. And then if you have any documents related to an individual computer, like a service receipt or something like that, that you want to import and have linked and attached to the computer record, go into edit mode here, and you can drag and drop either a file or a URL as a link to those documents. We're going to talk briefly about custom fields, how you add them in a few minutes, but just know these custom fields, there are 10 custom fields for computers, purchases, and devices that you can give a custom label to, select a data type, and then use on this custom tab. And then notes, pretty self-explanatory. History is a fairly new feature that is pretty powerful. It's actually new in the most recent 7.9 major release. And what this does is it keeps track of historical changes to devices. So from the time a computer is first discovered and these fields are initially populated all the way through its life cycle, you're going to be able to see any time any of the computer hardware configuration details change, any of the asset fields that you populate here, as well as things like warranty or other dates. Those kinds of fields are going to show up here and also be searchable. So if I want to search for, the manufacturer here, I can search and filter this page to show me just changes to certain fields or results. Any of the fields listed here become searchable on this page. So changes that I made, for example. And then on the right, you'll see that I have the ability to download or export the details from this history. Whatever is visible is what will show up in that downloaded file. So that's something to be aware of is when you export this, if you just want certain details in your export, you just simply filter with the search bar, click the download button, and what you see is what you'll get in that export. So that's all for computer details for now. I'm gonna come back to the computers page and talk about some of the features here when you're managing groups of computers. So as you can see on this page, the search bar is just searching for computers. I believe any of the visible data will be searched, but I know for sure computer name, model, I believe, but serial number definitely. And there is one field, asset ID, that isn't visible as one of the primary columns here, but is searchable. So if I search for an asset ID up top here, I can search based on that field, even though it's not one of the visible columns. Each computer can be expanded. So there are some additional details listed here. And the fields that are listed here can be modified. If I open up this set of options, it's the fields listed on this side that are the ones that are visible when you expand. And so instead of having to go into that details page for computers, if I just need to be able to quickly have access to MAC addresses, I can come here, Command or Control C to copy that MAC address and go paste it wherever I need it. Same thing for IP address, model, serial number. Any of these visible fields have easy access. I can go grab them and copy and paste them somewhere else if needed. That's what that is for. And then the other thing that you'll notice in that same set of options is grouping. This is another new feature that was added in 7.9. And if I go into this, I can select division or manufacturer. I wanted to show you these for just as an example, CPU type. If I select this, now all my computers are grouped and organized based on the CPU type they have. And I can hold Command on a Mac and click on one of these headers to collapse all, and then expand one at a time. You can see there's a lot of very old data in this demo server. So again, that's a Command click on the headers on Mac. I believe it's Control click on a Windows machine to open and expand everything all at once, or collapse everything all at once. And then another fairly new feature is once I've made these groups, I have the ability to very easily select all within a group. And now you can right click, and there are a number of options available within the right click menu. One of which I want to show you here is called Quick Edit. So if I select this Quick Edit option, it actually lets me add any computer fields I want and then modify all of them all at once for that selection of computers. So I could go in and populate the owner, the builder, the division, or any other field that I want, apply that, and it will make those changes to the entire selection all at once. And then a couple of the other things here, we will very briefly talk about forms. This helper option is a form, and open details is just like clicking on the name. Requesting an audit basically is telling the client that I want to do an immediate scan of the hard drive to determine what software is installed. Typically, you don't need to do that. Audits are going to happen on a schedule, but if you do have a need, maybe you've turned off audits for your virtual machines and you just made an update to the image and you want to do an audit immediately, you can do that from the web. Anchor in division. We're going to talk about divisions. We're going to talk about some of these other things. But basically what this means is your divisions are your organizational structure for your computers, and anchoring them will lock them there so that any automation won't apply to those computers. And then there are scripts that we will talk about. Those can be run on this selection of computers. And there are reports as well that can be run on this selection. And then, of course, deleting computers, you can do that from here as well on the web. So opening up, looking at divisions very briefly, there's a couple things I want to talk about here. One is creating and organizing computers into divisions. Most customers are doing this automatically through Active Directory integration. So even though it can be done manually here in the web, you don't want to do that unless that's how you're doing it on a regular basis. Because if it's automated, you might as well let the AD integration do it. There is another way to automate this internally using filters or rules that can't be configured and set up in the web. But the way that would work is you might look at a computer name prefix or an IP address range and create a rule that says if a computer fits this description, then move it into this division. And so that's another way to automate your computer organizational structure. We're not going to go into the details of that today, but you do have the ability in the web to add a new division with this plus button, and then you can drag and drop groups, selections of computers into divisions if that's how you're managing them manually. Sections. So you'll see there's different things going on here. Some of these look like folders, and those are what we call divisions. And then this other icon is a section, which you can see is a collection of divisions. Basically, sections are one way to create a nested structure. You can also create nested divisions, and you'll see some of these divisions are nested within one another. And sections are convenient because they allow you to assign accounts very easily to a section, so that when a specific user logs in, if their account has been assigned to a section, then that's all they can have access to. There's some other use cases for sections related to software management and assigning software to certain computer groups within purchase records. But for the most part, within the context of what we're talking about, sections are an easy way to restrict account access to certain computer groups. Okay, so we're going to move on. The other thing I wanted to show you here, there is this plus button that allows you to create a computer record manually. Now, obviously, the computer you create manually doesn't have our client installed, or at least that client has never logged in. And what will happen when you do that is a computer would be listed in the imported category. The reason for doing this might be lifecycle management. The computer may be on its way, shipped, hasn't arrived yet, but you want that record pre-created. You might also be using our loaner checkout module, and your loaner computers may not have our client installed. So there's various reasons why you might create a computer manually. It's not extremely common because most of the time, even if you are creating computer records that don't have our client installed, you're going to do that through imports. Whether that's from Intune or Jamf or from a CSV file. And those can be configured in their particular ways, but for the most part, this is not going to be a common thing. So I'm not going to go any further down that road right now. This hamburger or three-dot menu up top is just like a right click, just allows you to perform an action on the selection of computers that you've got. And then there's a refresh button. So I think that's everything here for the computers page for now. Everything that I just said pretty much applies equally to the devices page. There's a couple of differences. We don't have login types, but we do have categories up here. Devices don't consume any seats. So whether you're creating them manually or whether you're importing them from another system like PaperCut or from a CSV file. These are devices that might be created automatically if they're discovered by our client. Any monitors and storage drives will show up here if they were seen connected to a client computer. PaperCut will bring printers in. We have a PaperCut integration for that. Projectors, cameras, network devices, or any other type of hardware would have to either be created manually or brought in from a CSV file into Key Configure, which is the admin console. That cannot be done in the web just yet. Other than that, this devices page functions exactly like everything that we saw on the computers page. So next, what we're going to do is talk a little bit more about software. Our client gets installed. It scans the drive of each machine, in addition to discovering all those hardware configuration details, and you get a software program list. I'm not going to go too deep into the subject of software right now, but I just want to show you within the context of the web interface what the pages are and how you use them. This software page is really intended to be associated with the lab maps. If I click on a software product here, it's going to take me to this maps page, which we're going to talk about next. And it's going to show me where, if there are any available copies, where they are within the system. So if I come back to software, let me try that again. So we can see there's 0 copies of Adobe Creative Cloud currently on the satellite campus, and there's a couple in this lab. There's 3 here. There's no copies available there. That's the main use case for this main software page. The manage page is where you're going to go as an administrator to decide what software you want to track usage for. So as a brand new user who just deployed the client and is just starting to get software back, this is where you're going to come. You will see that the attention box is typically pre-selected, and that means that this page is going to generally show you just those things you haven't made a decision on. If I uncheck that, or in the case where everything has already been decided on, then we're going to see everything that's already been determined. Yes, whether yes, we're checking this box to track usage, or no, we're checking the red one to not track usage. The idea behind this manage page under software is that you come here to decide whether or not you're going to track usage of a given product. So the one other thing I'll mention is in this red column, not everything is going to have a red X or an X in that dot. I don't see any on this particular server, but a lot of times what you'll see is a little dot, a black dot in the middle of that circle. That means that it's a product that's ignored by default. So it's pre-selected not to track usage, but you can override that and select to track usage if you want, or you can click on the red dot and we'll put an X there saying that you've decided not to track usage. So if you see a dot in the middle of that red circle, that's what that means. And one comment on making those decisions. For the most part, if we have that dot in that red column, we're recommending that you not track usage. And the reason for that, the main reason for that, is that some products, the usage data isn't really valuable or important, like antivirus or various kinds of client programs that run in the background or are always running, or some things like web browsers that are almost always running, and you're not going to get a lot of valuable information out of tracking that, but you are going to fill up the database with a lot of useless usage data. You can do it. A lot of times customers will track usage of web browsers just to get an idea of their users' preferences, but we don't really recommend it just because it doesn't usually provide a lot of value, and it does have a cost in terms of consumption of hardware resources. On the very far right side here, there's this maps column. And what this is for is just to determine whether or not the software is going to be listed on this software page and on the lab maps. So if there's any software products that you don't want to show to end users as available within your labs, like antivirus or something, you can come to this manage page and uncheck those, And then when we go to the maps page or the software page, those won't be shown as available to the guest account or to end users that might come to the system. You could see there's other things here. Discovered is a way to filter to just show those products that are actually installed out on your network currently. Related are software products that have been downloaded to your server from our product recognition service, but are not necessarily or not actually installed or discovered on any of your computers. And then ignored products. This ignored category is a little bit different than just whether or not you've decided to track usage. What this means is that these programs don't even show up in audit reports. These are things that you're saying, I want to pretend these don't even exist because I just don't care about them. So that's what this ignored category is related to. And you can drag things into that ignored category. There are folders here. You see I've selected families. Just as a brief explanation, if I show all here, you'll see some of these have this box icon and some have this 4 square icon. Families are how we tend to decide what to track, because a family includes all of the editions, previously released editions of a product. So if I look at this Adobe Acrobat Pro family, I can see it's made up of all previously released versions of Adobe Acrobat Pro. The reason it's important to, or helpful to track usage of the family is that when new versions come out, we at Sassafras are going to update those families to include those new versions. And you won't have to come back and add those to your list of products that you're tracking, because you're tracking it at the family level. Other benefit is on the reporting side. You can run reports and essentially aggregate all the additions so that you can look at total Adobe Creative Cloud usage or total Acrobat Pro usage without seeing the individual versions listed on the reporting side. Okay, so we're going to briefly talk about this PRS tab. Basically, most of the time you're not going to have to do anything here, because products from our PRS or product recognition service are automatically downloaded when their programs are discovered on your computers. But if you've just deployed the client or just deployed a piece of software and you want to get the usage tracking set up prior to the audit and discovery process, you can do a search here for software products. You can restrict that to just the families and basically import those ahead of time, turn on tracking so that you don't have to wait for that audit process. And then another thing to know about here is we don't have definitions for every single product. Sometimes you'll come across a product, or you'll install or deploy a product that we don't have a definition for, and you'll want to either reach out to us to have that definition created, which is what we recommend. But let's say you've got an internally built program that you want to track usage for, that we're not going to have a definition for. There is a way in the Key Configure admin console to manually create product definitions, both for desktop installed programs and also for URLs. So if you wanted to track usage of a Salesforce or a specific, maybe internal website, maybe this web interface, you want to see how much your users are using the Lab Maps feature or something, you can, in Key Configure, create a product for a web-based program based on a URL pattern, and then track usage of that, just like a desktop installed product. Not going to do that today because it's not something that you can manage or do within the web, but be aware that that functionality exists in case you need it. And then, of course, as I said, that's done in the admin console. So let's jump to maps. We do have a video that goes into a deep dive of how to create and manage these lab maps. So I'm just going to describe the functionality on this call without building a map or floor plan. The idea here is for end users to have the ability to look at a campus or look at a location overall and see how many computers are available, in this case, in each computer lab. I can then click on a computer lab. I can then go in and look at the floor plan if one has been built. This floor plan was built within the tool. If I go into the settings, you'll see that I've got various kinds of objects and things that I can add to build out this floor plan and make this available to end users. If I click on a computer, I can see installed software. We have functionality that would allow remote access to these computers. So Lab Maps functionality is very popular. As I said, we do have other videos explaining how to configure this. So I just wanted to give you a brief introduction to what those are and what they're used for in most cases. Other than that, let's talk briefly about purchase records. You'll notice this page is configured very similar to the way that the devices and computers pages are configured. And a lot of the same things are true. I can select and do a quick edit. And there's some various things that we can do. Currently, I'm grouped by department. If I go in, I could group by another one of the available fields here. That's where these groupings come in. And then be aware there are purchase records for hardware and there are purchase records for software. There's a couple of other categories. Those are the main two. And if I go in to one of these purchase records, you see it's configured. It looks a lot like a computer details record. There are some purchase fields, various fields that can be created. What's interesting about purchase records is they can be linked out to either hardware or software. We're not going to go deep into how to use purchase records during this call. They're just like computers and other objects within the database. You can create them manually, one at a time, or you can import them from a CSV file using the Key Configure Admin Console. But in terms of the web interface and how to use them, it's just like computers and devices. And one thing that I didn't mention before, but I'll go ahead and mention now, are filters. On all of those 3 pages, purchases, devices, and computers, you have the ability to, on the computers page, you see there are a number of pre-existing built-in filters. And then I have the ability to do a one-time filter where it doesn't save it to this list, but I can filter based on one of the fields I'm looking for. Or I can click this plus button and actually create a filter, give it a name, and save it, in which case it will show up in the list below. And so these filters do exactly that. If I select one, it's going to show me all the computers that fit that criteria. And as I said, the ability to add them or create them is pretty intuitive. You add the field, you select it, and then there's some options for what to filter on, and then you could type what you're filtering for, and it will build out this syntax here automatically. On the computer filters, I mentioned this before as one of the ways to automate the process of organizing your computers into divisions. But filters are what you use to automatically move computers into divisions based on certain criteria. But that particular piece of filters, the setting up of those rules, can only be done in Key Configure. So you can create a filter to view computers in the web, but the ones that actually take actions against those computers have to be configured in Key Configure. All right. I'm going to jump into reports here in a second, and then we're going to talk about extras briefly, settings, and scripts. So let's jump into the reports page. Again, we do have other videos that go deep dive into building and creating reports. This video is more about that introduction, high level navigating and using the web interface. So we're going to talk briefly, but we're not going to dive deep into reporting today. I'm going to expand reports. You can see there's actually 3 pages related to reports. This main page is where we put what we call one-click reports. On the report builder page, this is where we have this long list of pre-constructed sort of canned report options. And when you either search and then select what you're looking for, now this is the report that I will run when I'm ready. I have the ability to save this as an on-demand report in the one-click folder, which is what creates it as one of those one-click templates we just saw. Or I could just use this as a run now report where I configure it, click run, and I just get the output without saving any kind of template. One thing on this date range selector, of course, you can select a custom range. You can also create built-in custom ranges. So in the time sets section here, it does allow you to, down at the bottom, create a date range where you give it a name, you select your date range, and you save it, and then that will become, in your report builder, that will become one of the options for the date ranges. Audit reports don't have date ranges, so what you saw a minute ago. Again, I'm not diving deep into all of these currently, but I will just mention the other option here to run on a schedule. So when you set a report to run automatically on a schedule, you are saving a template, but it won't show up on that reports page. It will show up on the saved reports page, and it will run automatically. So it will be there available for you when you log in, or you can add an email address or a list of email addresses and actually attach that report to the email. So the person receiving the email doesn't actually have to have access to the web interface to get that report in their inbox. Beyond that, there are other videos that talk about running reports, so I'll leave it to those. On the Save Reports page, this is where, again, you've got folders. You have the ability to filter the view in various ways. There's 2 or 3 different types of reports here. Completed ones are saved copies of report outputs. So if I open this up, for example, it didn't have to run it because this was a saved report that has previously been run. So maybe this was a scheduled report or one that was saved after the fact because it was run from the dashboard or from the reports page. And then we can see those on-demand reports. The ones in the one-click folder are the ones that show up on the main reports page. Others will only be accessible from here, but I can run any of these from this Save Reports page. And then we could also filter to the scheduled reports, which are those that are set to run automatically in the background. The report on the reports page, as I said, these are those one-click reports. You can add these to your dashboard. The other way of adding reports to your dashboard would be to go to the dashboard page, and there's a one-click widget you can add and then select which one of these you need. If you're adding a one-click report to someone else's dashboard, that's how you have to do it, because this add to dashboard button is just going to add it automatically to my dashboard. But if I was building or customizing a dashboard for someone else, I would go into the widget selection, go to the report tab, and then this one-click report widget, I would add it, and then go into the settings of that widget and select which one I wanted to add. That's why I go through explaining all of that, because there is a use case for doing it that way. We'll come back to extras. We're going to talk about settings very, very briefly. The only thing I want to touch on here is that auto update process. If you see this green dot on settings, it means that you're also going to see this green dot next to updates. And this just means there's a new version of our client available to download and make available to your clients to install. So if I click this accept button, It's going to do that, bring it down to this local server, paste in a local URL for your clients to grab it from. And if this is enabled and the individual computers have the auto update option turned on, that's all that's necessary for the client to be notified there's a new version available. It will download and install it. It doesn't require any special permissions on the operating system. It's able to do that on its own in the background silently with no end user notifications or clicking involved. So you'll notice settings has a toggle or drop down here with some options on the outside, and then the settings page, there's another list of settings. I'm not going to go through all of these currently, but I do want to touch on a couple of them that have to do with available features. The first one, actions. This is a fairly new feature. It was added in 7.9, and it allows you to create automations or automated workflows. If you've never used this before, there won't be any here. There's no default or built-in ones. The ones that you see here we created as just examples to show you. So this one, the idea is that if the life cycle stage changes, well, so first of all, these have a name. There are 4 types of actions that can be taken. One is to send an email. One is to call a third-party webhook in another system, change a computer record, or change a device when an event occurs. So all of these are looking for triggers internally, and then they'll perform whatever action is listed below. This one is looking for changes to the lifecycle stage field. If the lifecycle stage field changes and it changes to retired, then the action that will happen in this case is to change the login type to dormant, which would free up that seat, would take it out of dedicated or leased and drop it into a dormant state, which frees up that seat. And then it moves the computer out of its current division into a retired division. So that's the idea behind this one. There's another one here that would notify a given admin email address if the amount of RAM in a computer changed. Just automatically send an email that says this computer, the RAM in this computer has changed from this to that. Just a couple of examples of the kinds of actions that people have asked for, and that's why this functionality was added. So you can kind of customize and build your own. Extras, so there's this extras option under settings, and then there's this extras page. These are essentially add-ins. They don't cost anything extra, but if you install them, then you'll see this extras tab, and the ones you've installed will be listed here. I'm not going to go through the details of how to use these, but on this extras page under settings, you just click to install it, and then you'll see they're available. The more popular ones are the loaner checkout module, the pivot table module, and user assets, I would say, are the ones people talk about the most and get the most usage out of. They're all cool. They all do their own things. You can see a little description here of what they do. If you need some assistance or want more details, definitely feel free to reach out to support. We can assist with questions and configuration. And then the other couple things I wanted to talk about, one is forms. Again, I'm not going too deep here. I just want you to be aware that what forms are for. I'm going to jump back to computers. I'm going to right-click on a computer, and I'm going to choose this helper. And what you're going to see is I get details about that computer, but it's not the standard view of that computer. That's because this form is the helper form that was manually created here by an admin on this server. The request that led to this functionality was that I've got a limited access account. I've got a user. I want them to be able to log in and click on a computer and see some details, but I don't want them to have access to everything. And I want to control the arrangement of the fields. So that's basically the use case for the most part. There's others that might come up, but that was what led to the creation of this functionality. But you have the ability to build out a form, and then in settings, you can actually assign a form to an account so that when they click on a computer record or a device record or a purchase record, instead of seeing the standard details, they would get the form that you created and assigned to them. Another one very important to be aware of, because there are a lot of bulk actions and automations that you can use here, is the scripts tab. I've already mentioned some of them. So we talked about automatically gathering Lenovo and Dell warranty dates. We do have one for Microsoft. The last I heard, Microsoft made some changes, and the last I heard, this one was no longer working. I don't know if it's been fixed. So I'm just kind of guaranteeing the Dell and Lenovo. Dell requires an API key and a kind of an authentication key for theirs to work. For most customers, they have the required credentials or accounts necessary. They just need to get that from Dell to make this work. Lenovo just uses a serial number, and you can just run this on your Lenovo computers. You don't actually have to select the computers to run this. You can just click to run this, and our server knows what's a Dell and what's a Lenovo, and it's only going to query those manufacturer servers for the appropriate computers. So you can just click to run these to populate them. A lot of these schedules do allow you to automate running them on a regular basis. With this little clock icon, you can actually set up a schedule for your scripts. So that's a couple of them. I recommend scanning this list. There's a lot of cool stuff in here. I mentioned the Jamf and Intune scripts. We have an integration with Team Dynamics that comes in the form of a script. And there are a lot of other pretty cool things here. All of these came from customer requests for various types of functionality that we didn't already have built in. So we wrote a script and made it available to install and use. And you see some of them can only be run in the admin console, and most of them, though, are available to install and run in the web. And it just depends on what the script does and what it's for, whether you would run it right from here or go to the computers page, make a selection, right click, and run it from the scripts menu here. That really covers everything that I wanted to talk about today. Again, the goal has been an introduction to navigating the web UI for maybe long-term administrators who have never really gotten into the web. They've always used Tconfigure, or also for brand new users that maybe have been assigned an account but don't have full open access, or again, also for administrators that might be onboarding today or immediately and just need an introduction to using this tool.